Invertiverse, a novel, written and read by Derrick Davis. Prologue. Quiet enveloped the desert landscape, with only the clicking of cicadas performing to the night sky. Their music played against the twinkling stars as grains of sand danced in the wind. The soft breeze scorched the wildlife, despite the sun's disappearance. A girl sat on a porch that edged the dark desert. The wind seared her exposed toes, barely shielded by her small white flip-flops. She didn't even flinch from the heat as she focused on the bright stars that were suspended high above. A gust of wind caused her long strands of red hair to twirl wildly. In the blink of an eye, something blocked out a small portion of the stars. It was difficult to discern what it had been, as her hair obscured the view. A large bird? A distant airplane? "Susie," a voice said, approaching from behind her. "It's late. Time for bed." Susie sighed, then turned around. Her mother stood at the front doorway of their house. She was on the phone, with the cord wrapped around her arm. "It's too hot," Susie whined. "The sheets will get all stuck to me." "I know. I'm sorry. The AC should be fixed in a few days, okay? You have to try." Their air conditioner had hardly worked during the stifling summer. Any distraction from the heat was tantalizing for Susie. She quietly begged, "Can I stay out just a little longer? The stars are so pretty right now." She turned back to face them. The stars sparkled like gems against her wide eyes. Her mother's lips curled into a smile. "Okay, but only 10 more minutes. Not 15, not 11, 10. Susie beamed. Her mother turned around and went back inside the house, almost tripping on some sealed cardboard boxes before closing the door. They had only lived in the desert for a few weeks, and Susie was still excited by the new environment. She was used to being trapped within the confines of a small apartment, staring out through thick glass windows, watching people bustling up and down congested city streets. But her new home was in the middle of a vast desert with much more intriguing distractions. Prickly cacti, spiky Joshua trees, and racing roadrunners that populated the landscape. At night, Susie often heard howls from coyotes. She desperately wanted to see one, expecting them to look like big, wild dogs. There were finally things more exciting than her crayon scribbles of unicorns and whales. Unfortunately, it was the middle of summer. Her new school would remain closed for another month. That meant she always had to join her mother at work. Susie's father had been absent for as long as she could remember, and her mother couldn't afford a sitter. It was awkward sitting quietly in a small police station as her mother took phone calls at a desk. Coloring books and paint-by-numbers were torture for Susie when thrilling creatures like rattlesnakes waited for her outside. The police station had at least prompted some new career aspirations. The idea of wearing bulky police uniforms, speaking into handheld radios, and shooting guns was exciting to her. Then there were the badges, the shiny golden badges that all the officers wore. She had wanted one so badly that the amused officers eventually made a cheap reproduction for her. They even engraved her name on it. S. Jenkins. Susie almost never took it off, wearing it on the porch at that very moment. She looked up at the stars, their faint light illuminating her future aspirations. Susie imagined what her new school would be like, and the new friends she could make. Her mother could also make new friends, or a new boyfriend, perhaps. But boyfriends seemed like a complicated thing, the way her mother always. A loud whimper abruptly invaded Susie's ears. She sharply looked down from the stars and gazed into the desert beyond. There was an immediate silence. Even the cicadas ended their performance. The front porch light's beam illuminated just a few yards ahead before fading into the black veil of night. Only the thin outline of a Joshua tree was visible, standing at the light's edge. Susie thought the strange tree resembled a tall person, but with many bent and twisted arms that reached out. It had a prominent presence among the desert's other indigenous plant life. The wind picked up again, tossing more grains of sand in a swirl of air that flew into the darkness. Susie leaned forward, her ears attuned. For a moment, there was only more silence. She tried not to blink, not to miss a thing. The whimper finally emanated again. The sound was closer this time, but its source remained hidden. It didn't sound like it had come from a person, perhaps a dog. Susie turned around and faced the closed door of the house, imagining her mother just beyond it. She wished there had been a flashlight somewhere nearby, but they were all likely still packed in shipping boxes. The whimper erupted into the air, louder this time. Susie's head snapped back around to face the desert. Something was now standing at the edge of the light. It wasn't a dog. It was a coyote. Her mouth split into a grin. She had finally seen her first coyote. It was a brown and gray-haired thing, scraggier and more wolf-like than a dog. However, as it continued to emerge, the coyote was visibly shaking and bleeding on the ground. Susie's grin faded. The poor thing, it was limping toward her, practically dragging itself. She wasn't sure if they normally walked up to people at all, but it had clearly been hurt by something. Or by someone. As the coyote continued to approach, Susie gasped. The light revealed that one of its hind legs was missing. The shaking animal wheezed, staring at her, while blood oozed profusely from the open stump where its leg had once been. Susie's mouth opened to speak, but she couldn't muster a single word. What had happened to its leg? She grasped her badge. A police officer wouldn't have been scared, so she tried not to be. Her fingers trembled against the metal. Snap! Her heart raced. The new sound came from the Joshua tree ahead, somewhere near the top of its branches. It was too dark to see what had caused it. She imagined it had just been another gust of wind. The coyote yelped and began to hobble back into the desert. Why would it leave? Didn't it need her help? Susie immediately leapt from the porch and chased after it until she reached the edge of the light. No, come back, she yelled. But it was too late. Without a flashlight, she couldn't see where it had gone. Her heart continued to pound as sweat crept down her forehead. Snap! She froze beneath the Joshua tree. One of its branches had cracked. Pieces of the tree's thick spikes and tattered bark littered her head. As she brushed it all off, a strong, putrid smell invaded her nose. The scent was like a disgusting combination of wet vomit and burnt rubber. Her nose wrinkled. She had never smelled anything quite like it before. A sharp crunch came from beyond the branches. Something then fell from the tree and rolled out into the light. The coyote's severed leg, ravaged and half-eaten. Chunks of flesh hung off the bones, while blood stained the sand. Susie screamed. Miss Jenkins abruptly ended her phone call, flung open the door, and raced outside. Susie liked to play rambunctiously, especially after revealing new aspirations of becoming a police officer. She often ran around the house and pretended to shoot like one, but she didn't usually scream. "Susie!" Miss Jenkins yelled. A quiet stream of wind was all that greeted her. The porch light revealed nothing but an empty yard. "Susie!" she shouted again. "Where the hell are you?" A deafening shriek erupted into the silent landscape. She jumped back, almost falling over. What the hell was that? As she gained composure, a cracking sound from the Joshua tree drew her gaze. Something dark and indiscernible rested within its branches, blocking the distant stars. A foul stench assaulted her nose, while the tree continued to crack. As debris fell to the ground, 2 large crimson eyes glowed between the branches before disappearing. Miss Jenkins froze. After a moment, a gust of air blasted against her face, followed by a flapping sound that blared in her ears. There was a loud thud as something fell from the tree and rolled toward her into the light. Trembling, Miss Jenkins took a few steps toward the object. It was something small and white, with specks of red that brightly contrasted against it. No, it couldn't be. Crouching down, she reached out her hand and picked it up. She shuddered, breathing rapidly. It was one of Susie's white flip-flops, covered in specks of blood. "No," Miss Jenkins moaned. Her eyes squeezed shut, tears already streaming down her face. She refused to believe what she was holding. "No!" she screamed, her voice curdling. "Susie!" Miss Jenkins dropped the flip-flop and ran toward the Joshua tree, but it was too late. The shrieking entity rose above the branches, flapping a pair of gigantic wings as it flew into the nightscape with her daughter. The porch light briefly revealed Susie's motionless body within its grasp. There was no struggle, only a wide, empty stare. A red trail of blood dripped from her pale lips, glistening in the faint light. She was as lifeless as stone. "Oh God, no!" her mother hollered. "No!" Susie swiftly disappeared into the darkness. She was gone. Miss Jenkins stared out into the night, looking beyond the desert flora as her tears continued to fall. Suddenly, she wiped them away and scowled. She never gave in to the monsters of Los Angeles, and she wasn't going to give in to the monsters of the desert now. Miss Jenkins raced back inside the house, stumbled into her bedroom, and opened the closet. On the top shelf was a small box that she grabbed and hastily opened. A Colt revolver with ammunition was inside. Her hands shook as she quickly loaded the gun. Dashing out of her room, she passed by her messy kitchen and grabbed a large knife off a wooden block. She spun around to snatch her keys from the nearby counter and ran out the front door. Miss Jenkins sprang into her car and instantly accelerated down the dirt road, rumbling over the rugged terrain. She was driving in the middle of the desert, miles away from anyone that could help her. Far ahead, she could barely make out the creature's black shape as it flew against the stars. It was still too dark to know what the elusive thing really was, but luckily she was still able to track it. She lowered the driver's side window and aimed her gun. Rocks littered the dirt road, forcing her car to bump and swerve, making it difficult to focus on the moving target. She couldn't let that thing get away. Justice had to be served for her daughter. As Miss Jenkins drove closer to the flying menace, something glinted against the car's headlights. At first, she thought it was part of the creature's body, but then realized it was Susie's golden badge. Miss Jenkins aimed the gun higher, away from where the shining badge was. She wanted to avoid hitting her daughter's body, holding the gun as evenly as she could. She fired. The monster shrieked, but she wasn't sure if it had been hit or merely startled. It shifted its flight further away from the road. "Damn it!" she shouted. Without caring what would happen to her car, she steered it off the road and into the desert landscape. The car jolted and shook as it ran over rocks, plants, and whatever else was in the way. Her gaze remained focused on her daughter's captor, who dipped between a grove of Joshua trees ahead. "No!" Miss Jenkins gasped. "Where did it go?" Her headlights were only bright enough to see what was directly in front of her, while she dodged as many trees and cacti as she could. A loud pop erupted from a rear tire, sending the car on a lopsided trajectory as she continued the chase. The kitchen knife slid around the passenger seat, almost falling to the floor. Her gun was now aimed at nothing but the darkness. She was ready to make her next move. "Where is it?" she said. Wham! Her car was rammed from the passenger side, making it slam against a Joshua tree. The gun flew from her hand, and she was no longer certain where it was. Miss Jenkins whimpered in her seat as the car's wheels spun in the dirt. The Joshua tree's trunk bent and cracked from the pressure. Crack! Her driver's side door was torn off the car and flung into the desert. The crunch of metal pierced her ears as she was furiously ripped out of her seat and slammed onto the ground. The dirt from the impact dispersed into the air against the headlight's illumination until it was darkened by the creature. She flailed her arms, grasping at anything to help defend herself. Her fingers grazed over a smooth, hard surface within the coarse sand. The kitchen knife's handle. As she grabbed the knife, the monster descended upon her, knocking the air out of her lungs. Its eyes glowed, blinding her own, while an intense, piercing pain shot into her neck. The creature was biting her, but she didn't feel teeth. It felt like two large mandibles were digging into her skin. She slammed the knife into the creature's thick, hairy body while its massive, leathery wings continued to flap in the air. The monster shrieked in pain, then lifted her a few feet off the ground with her neck still in its grasp. Her throat gargled as it was nearly ripped out of her body. While she couldn't see its face, she shoved the knife into where she believed it was. The monster screeched. Blood sprayed from its face onto hers as it plummeted to the ground, dropping Miss Jenkins. She tumbled away, then slammed against the front of her car. Her vision blurred. The creature continued to screech while it flew above Miss Jenkins, with drops of its blood landing on her head. She could hardly move. The pain in her neck began to fade. Her body became increasingly numb as her heart rate slowed. Was she having a heart attack? Was she losing blood? Was she dying? Tears streamed down her face, but she couldn't feel them. Her gaze locked upward, barely able to see the creature with her daughter's body. She had lost all sympathy for herself, concluding that she had failed Susie. Without warning, the monster with Susie's body jolted backwards into the darkness, as if something invisible had snatched them. A gust of wind rushed past Miss Jenkins, with a force so powerful that even she could feel it against her numb body. But as soon as the wind came, it was gone. Silence. Nothing made a sound around her. Miss Jenkins' frozen eyes forced her to stare at the open sky. She was unsure how much longer she had to live. Nothing seemed to matter anymore. The monster was gone. Her daughter was dead and taken from her. Abducted into the night, into the stars. This is author Derrick Davis. I hope you enjoyed listening to this special recording of the prologue to my science fiction novel, Invertiverse. To find out what happens next, read the novel now. Available in hardcover, paperback, and eBook formats through various retailers. Due to budget and recording limitations, a full audiobook is not available. If interest in the novel persists or assistance is provided, the situation may change. For more information about Invertiverse, visit derrickdavismedia.com.